Welcome to our study on setting Israel free. Now, Jesus tells us that Israel will go into captivity 3.5 years before his return to the planet. Now, in Luke 21:24, it says, "And they will fall by the edge of the sword." Okay, if you study the verses, the "they" that will fall by the edge of the sword are the people of Israel and of Jerusalem. So it reads, "And they shall fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem will be trampled by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled." Now, another verse we look at tells us that the Gentiles will trample Jerusalem underfoot for 3.5 years. So few people believe this because Israel has won all of its battles. When Israel is still on top, Israel is still a very capable military regime and got nuclear weapons and is very, very capable of defending itself. And so most people just believe, well, whatever this verse is saying, "and they shall fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive in all nations, in Jerusalem," that's the capital city of the Israeli people, "will be trodden and trampled underfoot of the Gentiles." Well, how can all of this be? Well, Jesus gives us the full picture of this back in verse 20, Luke 21:20. "And when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know its desolation is near." It's going to be desolate. It's going to be a desolated city. It's no longer going to be under the control of the Israeli people. Verse 21, "Then those who are in Judea," okay, land of Palestine, land of Israel, that area, "those who are in Judea, let them flee to the mountains, and let those who are in the midst of her meaning Jerusalem, depart," get out of Jerusalem before this begins to happen. "And let not those who are in the country enter her meaning Jerusalem." Don't go into Jerusalem, and these events are beginning to pile up. Luke 21:22, "For these are the days of vengeance, that all things that were written may be fulfilled. But woe to those," verse 23 of Luke 21, "woe to those who are pregnant and those who are nursing babies in those days, for there will be great distress." In Luke it says great distress. In Matthew it says great tribulation in the land, and wrath upon this people. Which people? The people of Israel, the people who control Jerusalem, the Israeli people. Verse 24, "They will fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem be trampled by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles is fulfilled." Then, after this happens, after the battle and after many Israelis are killed and many Israelis are taken captive, then, after 3.5 years, Jesus comes back to planet Earth. So we have a 3.5 year window there where the Israeli people are in captivity if they didn't get killed in the battle. Luke 21:27, "Then shall the Son of Man be seen coming in the clouds up in the air, with power and great glory." Now, Jesus connects for us Luke 21:20, where it says armies and flee to the mountains, with Matthew 24:16, where it says flee to the mountains and the setting up of the abomination of desolation. So in Matthew 24:15, "Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place." Where's the holy place? On the holy Temple Mount, where the temple used to be, over there in old Jerusalem city. There's a huge stone Temple Mount, flat level area, and that's where the temple used to be. That's the holy place. And so when you see the abomination of desolation, or another rendition of that is the abomination that makes desolate. Remember, the city of Jerusalem is going to be made desolate. Spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, verse 16. "Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains." So we have this flee to the mountain scenario when you see something abominable that makes desolate put in the holy place. And and you have to be a student of the Bible to understand some of these things. Let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains, for then there will be great tribulation. No one said sore distress or something. And so it has not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. So this is going to be the worst time in man's history, the absolute worst time. And if you can recall back to World War II, there were some really dark days during World War II. This is going to be the worst, the absolute worst in all of man's history. So when does this start? When you see the abomination of desolation, or when you see armies surrounding the city of Jerusalem. Now we go back to Daniel that Jesus referenced, Daniel 11:21, and in his place shall arise a vile person to whom they will not give the honor of royalty, but he shall come in peaceably and seize the kingdom by intrigue. So this is a person coming to power, not the normal way, but he's going to come in peaceably, he's going to seize the kingdom by intrigue. And then 10 verses later, the abomination of desolation is set up in verse 31, Daniel 11:31. And forces shall be mustered by him, and they shall defile the sanctuary fortress, or the holy place. And then they shall take away the daily sacrifices and place there, where the daily sacrifices were being fulfilled in the holy place. So they'll take away the daily sacrifices and place there in the holy place the abomination of desolation. Now in Revelation chapter 13, God calls this vile person, this soon-to-be king, the abomination king, or the beast. If you look in Revelation, you'll see it referred to many times as the beast. Revelation 13 verse 4 says, so they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, a person, a great leader, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast, who is able to make war with the beast, referring to the fact that this beast who sets up the abomination of desolation in the holy place in Jerusalem is the greatest military power existing of that day and can beat all other military powers in the world, because he's essentially forming one world ruling government with his military and his power. Verse 5 of Revelation 13, and he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and he was given authority to continue 42 months. And on Hebrew calendar, that turns to be 3.5 years. So this vile king, this beast, this abomination-setting king will have authority to continue his work and continue his one world ruling government for 3.5 years. And then Jesus comes back and throws him and the false prophet in the lake of fire. Verse 7 of Revelation 13. And it was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, the saints, and authority was given to him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. So you can see a one world ruling government is set up by this vile abomination king. Now to this point, it looks very bad for Israel. They have been killed during the battle shortly after the abomination of desolation is set up. Many of them are taken into captivity into many countries. But Jesus has plans to build his own one world ruling government with Israel as the lead nation. We can see that in Zechariah 14:9. And the Lord shall be king over all the earth. So Jesus is coming back. He's going to be king over the whole earth. In Ezekiel 37 verse 21, then say to them, thus said the Lord, is a prophecy from God through Ezekiel, surely I will take the children of Israel from among the nations, wherever they have gone, and I will gather them from every side and bring them into their own land. So there's going to be a massive regathering. Some people think this has already taken place, but the very next verse proves that it hasn't. It says, verse 22, and I will make them one nation in the land, one nation referring to not two nations, the Jewish branch of the 12 tribes of Israel and then the northern 10 tribes, but they'll all be put back together. All 12 tribes will be one nation with King David as their ruler. Okay, we'll see that. And I will make one nation in the land on the mountains of Israel, and one king shall rule over them, and they shall no longer be two nations. That hasn't happened yet. Nor shall they ever be divided into two kingdoms again. When Solomon died, the two kingdoms, the north and the south, the Jews and all the other tribes, got separated into two major kingdoms, one in the north, one in the south, the Jews in the south around Jerusalem. So, verse 24 of Ezekiel 37 says, David, my servant, will be king over them, and they shall all have one shepherd. They shall also walk in my judgments. This is God speaking, or Jesus Christ speaking. My judgments, and observe my statutes and do them. So Jesus is going to rule planet Earth. King David is going to be the king over all the tribes of Israel, one nation under God, right, under Jesus, in the land of Israel between the river Nile and the river Euphrates, which was what was promised. Then they shall dwell in the land, this is verse 25 of Ezekiel 37, they shall dwell in the land that I have given them, given to Jacob my servant, where your fathers dwelled, and they shall dwell there, and their children and their children's children forever. And my servant David, King David, will be resurrected. He shall be their prince, or their ruler forever. So this one nation will be the superpower of the world in those days. No one else will be able to challenge the authority of Jesus Christ ruling planet Earth. So we come to the good side, or the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey might say. Israel, even though it has a terrible time during the 3.5 years of the beast power, then Israel becomes the one world ruling superpower nation, far greater than the United States, and be able to control and rule and challenge anybody who would challenge Jesus Christ for rulership. Isaiah 2 verse 2. Now it shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established on the top of the mountains, and he shall be exalted above the hills. And it says, all nations shall flow unto it. They'll all come to Jerusalem. Verse 3, many people shall come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, the Israeli people. He will teach us his ways. They will come to Jerusalem, the capital of the world, the superpower capital of the world, and they will want to learn his ways. And he will teach us his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. So even though Jerusalem has a terrible destiny in the short run, it has a fabulous destiny of being world superpower, of capital of the world, where people come to learn and to be taught the ways of Jesus Christ, and to go back to their countries and live according to the teachings and the ways of Jesus Christ. For out of Zion shall go forth the Lord and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Verse 4 of Isaiah 2, and it shall be, and he shall judge between the nations, and rebuke many people afar off. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks, a reference to military weaponry, tanks, military hardware, metal, will be changed from swords or from attack weapons to plowshares or farming implements, and spears that you use to kill people with will be changed into pruning hooks. It's sort of an analogy for all history. We're not using spears and swords nowadays, although the swords are still being used to some degree. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. So this superpower Israel will mandate that nobody learn how to make war. There'll be no military colleges. There'll be no places for people to develop skills in military, because peace will be all around the world, and Jesus Christ as a spirit being, and the leaders of the spirit being realm, King David and others, will ensure that there's peace and there's no more war. Now, many think Israel will be pushed into the sea, but the Bible shows that Israel will be the superpower nation for 1,000 years. of world peace.